I'd now like to hand over, ladies and gentlemen, Lachlan Searle.
Thank you, Martin, and congratulations to you and your board on some fantastic work that you do around Canberra for young blokes. I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land which we're gathered on today, the Ngunnawal people and the Wiradjuri people who are with us here tonight. Tonight's going to be pretty emotional for me, which is why I've got some notes. And I'm not going to bury the lead, because a few years back when I was studying sports media at UC, Tim said, never bury the lead, get it out early. And I'm going to give you some context. I've been writing letters to my kids for the last 8 years or so. They're only little, they're only 4 and 3. So tonight is a letter for them, but you guys can listen in too. And I've also bought a bit of a renter crowd, so if I get emotional, just laugh, okay? So, dear Tom and Lottie, tonight's about sharing, so hopefully we can do some good, because a lot of people have helped us over the last 678 days. Tonight's about grief, it's about being positive when it's really hard, and it's about being present as a parent. Being present in the moment, because moments can disappear in a moment. I'm going to need to tell these people some stories, Tom, is that okay? Yep. And luckily you're not old enough to get embarrassed. That's why we've got Brett videoing it, so I can embarrass you later, okay? So some of the people here don't know that Mummy died, Rebecca McLachlan, on December 5, 2014 from streptococcus and the toxic shock that endured. They don't know that she had the best care possible at Canberra Hospital, but it just wasn't enough to outrun the infection. And they don't know that about 3,000 people a year die in similar circumstances, basically through sepsis. So more than the road toll, more than breast cancer, about the same number of suicide. They don't know that the morning Mummy died, I took you guys into the ICU and we said goodbye, and you kissed her and you told her you loved her, and you were braver than the biggest lions in Africa, Thomas. Stop eating chips. And I don't know that on Father's Day this year I bawled my eyes out after you guys came in with breakfast in bed, which consisted of a plastic cup and a plastic strawberry, which was a smoothie, wasn't it, Lottie? And a carrot. So the carrot was pretty nice at 6 a.m. I've never regretted taking you guys in to say goodbye, because at the time I just went with my gut. And really, since then I've just done that. I've sort of, gut's a pretty powerful feel, you just do it. So I haven't let time or opinion or emotion or judgment get in the way. I've just gone with my gut, and yeah, I've probably made some silly mistakes, but I feel I've done the right thing by myself and by you guys. When you're old enough and mature enough, I can show you when we went and said goodbye to Mummy, because I had it filmed, which people might think's a bit odd, but I wanted these guys to know exactly what happened and to be part of it. So when they're old enough, I can show them. And at the same time, we filmed the eulogies at the funeral for exactly the same reason, so they can understand all the beautiful things that were said about their mum, and it just helps me remember, and it'll help them remember. I think they're going to be pretty happy with it down the track. So she's a big part of me, and I guess she's an even bigger part of you guys. And I say she's half, but the other day Tommy said, "Oh no, Dad, she's the good half." And I was like, "Okay, thanks, mate. Appreciate it." So tonight's about dealing with grief and trying to be the best dad that I can be, and also a mum, I guess now. I'm not an expert on grief. I only really know about my own, but I've got a pretty good idea on how these two have grieved as well. And the way I see it, you kind of learn about grief severely at one point in your life. And for me, I was 38, so something unexpected happens to someone you love dearly, and you learn about, okay, this is real grief, not the losing a grandparent who you expect to happen. But the tricky thing for these two is that they learn about it at a really young age. So Tommy was 3 and 3 days, and Potsy was 23 months, so you were a very big girl, Lottie. Are you a big girl? Yeah. And initially I think I was working on shock and adrenaline, and in a weird way, I kind of felt empowered by the whole thing, which might sound a bit odd, but it sort of gave real clarity to what was important. And I remember at the time I just used to say, nah, that doesn't matter. There was so much stuff that didn't matter. And there was obviously two things that mattered a lot. I remember having coffee with a mate who's in this room in February, and he said something like, "Oh, you seem to be ahead of it all." He'd lost his father recently, and he said, "Oh, you seem to be ahead of it all and going really well." And to be honest, I wasn't. And it was probably, as the months got colder, I got worse and got better again, and then things got worse again. Grief is very personal. It's very private. When you think about it, the relationship you have with the person who's passed away is those two things as well, very personal and very private. So it makes sense that grief is like that. And a lot of people had a relationship with Beck, family, friends, and a lot of people have grieved very differently. Grief is very time consuming. It engulfs you and you can't concentrate. I tried to go back to work for a few days a week, and Matt and Joe were really supportive of that. It just didn't work. Like you couldn't focus for 10 minutes. So it's sad a lot of the time, grief. It wasn't for me. It wasn't a depressing thing. It was just sad, and you learn to deal with that. You learn to adjust to, managing the sad and managing the waves. And you've got to adjust, otherwise you just can't function. And probably the best thing for me was these guys needed practical stuff. They needed me to get them in and out of the bath and cook them dinner and get them dressed. So I didn't have the luxury, or wasn't able to lie around for days on end. I occasionally got a day to lie around when Mum and Dad would take the kids. But anyway, in a strange way, the challenges earlier in my life kind of helped me deal with Beck's death. And the way I look at it, there have been 4 turning points in my life. And by turning points, I mean real fight or flight type pressure, where only you and you alone can deal with what you need to deal with. And in all 4 cases, I was lucky because I had the support of family and close friends. And like Martin was saying earlier, there's people who don't have that insurance plan. And that's why what Menslink does is really good, because especially for young men. I currently work at Mental Health Australia, and we've got a promise campaign at the moment, and it's pretty clear that men don't talk about this sort of stuff. So that's part of the reason why I'm doing it. So Mum and Dad, Bob and Helen, or Granny and Popper as the kids call them, have been my role models and my rock, and I love them. Thank you. Last year I overheard, don't laugh Tommy, it's not funny. Lottie. Last year I overheard a woman in a shop say to her colleague, "Oh, I can't wait till my daughter turns 18 and I can retire from being a parent." And I was just like, are you serious? Anyway, all the parents know how naive and crazy that comment is. But Mum and Dad have supported me. They've cooked, they've cleaned, they've cared for the kids, they've cared for me. They let me go to the World Cup last year on a bit of a bender, which was awesome. They let me go to Rio, well, not let me, but they looked after the kids while I went to Rio this year for the Paralympics, so thank you very much. Parenting is forever, people, so just embrace it. Like, you got to be in the moment, be present. So thanks Mum and Dad for the roasts, the house at the coast, and for your love and unconditional support the most. All right, let's rewind, have some fun. It's 1994. Braddon's a no-go zone unless you've got a really hot car and want to do laps. Cotton Eye Joe's playing at the private bin. I'm playing in the thirds at Darra on the wing. And we go to King's Cross for a school trip, who would have thought. Somehow I graduated Darra College that year for the first time. My TER would have got me into horse husbandry at Orange Agricultural University. I didn't like horses unless they were running on Cup Day. So that summer, I pretty much had a summer of self-loathing and, what am I going to do with my world? And all my friends are going to uni and overseas, and the really smart ones were doing apprenticeships, and now they're all minted and live up here on the hill. I enjoyed year 11 and 12 way too much, and I forgot that you actually had to work if you wanted to achieve something. So I decided to do year 13, and I guess that was, for me as a young adult, 18 years old, that was my first challenge, okay? Make a decision and do some work. So I actually worked out that I could actually do some schoolwork if I put my head down, so that worked out okay. And the degree that I wanted to do, which was sports media at UC, was a really hard degree to get into, but because Tim was teaching it, it was pretty easy once you got there. All you had to do was listen to his 8:15 bulletin or whatever it was, and away you went. So, although it took half the class about a year to work that out. And then, so after year 13, I went overseas and did a gap year. And Lottie and Tom, that's where I met your ma, standing in a bar. Well, it was actually on Kentucky, in a campground, but it was in Paris, so it was a little bit romantic. So let's fast forward 10 years, 2004. So uni was good fun. I mean, when's it not? I managed to meet and work with some great people, and then I got a job at the Brumbies right at the right time. And one of the first media issues, not a crisis, because there are real crises in this world, and there are media issues, Pemby. One of the first issues was the Cape Town Taxi 5. Some of you will remember it. It was actually 6 because Quinzo was in the boot, I reckon. Anyway, 5 years at the Brums, 5 finals, 2 titles, a suitcase full of signed shit, and 0 tackles by me and Roffy. It was the perfect apprenticeship under people like Mark Cinderbury, who paid me like an apprentice, Phil Thompson, David Pembroke, Carolyn Swindell, Phil Small, Phil Lynch, the big and tall, Kev Noon, Damien Hill, and the Beaver, Eddie Jones. At the time, I was shit scared of Cinders. He was a big bloke. I was young. Years later, he'd employ me again in England, and then I'd help him play some PR politics, and he got a job back in Australia, actually in Perth, so different. There used to be a Chinese restaurant right here. Yes, there we go. It was an old school Lazy Susan type, and many innovation plan, which was basically just steal a good idea from somewhere else. Many an innovation plan from the Brumbies was hatched in this very room. I love telling you kids that I was involved in naming 2 of Canberra's mascots, and I'm pretty sure, Tom, I'm pretty sure the idea for Brumby Jack came from that table just there. All right? With some chicken and MSG and a case of 2 is new. All right. Remarkably, on my Cinders severance and the fact that Becca got a job as a lawyer, so that probably helped more, we managed to buy a house, and we got engaged that night, and then we got married 2 weeks before the fires in 2003. And then we moved to Sydney when Eddie asked me to come and join the Wallabies. Apprenticeship well and truly over. That's when I realised that you can actually work while you're asleep. No, sorry, that's wrong. That you actually need to work while you're asleep if you work for Beaver. And that's not a joke. We had Vodafone as a major sponsor, and I reckon I was one of the first people in Australia to get a smartphone. It was called an iMate, which is ironic because Beaver only ever calls people mate. What are you doing, mate? What are you doing? Anyway, I had this stylus thing, and we landed in Wellington, and the Blacks had named their team as we were flying over, and you know, the plane was taxiing in, and Beaver's at me. What's the team, mate? I need to know the team. Use your new phone. It's an effing phone, mate. It's a smartphone. I go, oh, righto, mate. Well, the 1G wasn't really working back then. And I said, sorry, mate, it's not... Mate, it's a phone. Just ring someone. Anyway, we lost that test. Actually, we lost most of the tests in New Zealand. Were you playing those, Robbie? Yeah. And I reckon I lost about 10 kegs that season just due to stress, and Dad knows the story then. Anyway, Beaver was and is relentless, and that's why they'll win the World Cup in 2019, and if they keep him politics-wise, they'll win it in 2023 as well. When he heard about Beck's death, he sent me a 7-word email. Sorry to hear about your wife, mate, which in reality is 6 more words than he'd send to anyone else. So I smiled. Working for Eddie and Cinders taught me to plan, be prepared, and know your effing plan or you'd effing know about it. He gets the best out of players and people, and if you're up for it, you can learn a lot. And I went back for some more stupidly at Saracens, which was good fun. So 25 odd tests for the Wallabies, a few tackles in court sessions, where they used to call me the rattlesnake because of my massive shoulders. And then Eddie was sacked on the back of a series of losses and a whole lot of politics. And then, stupidly, 6 months later, I was deemed to have somehow had influence on the team's performance and the agenda, and I was sacked as well. I was 29, and I guess for me that was my second real big challenge in life, second big kick in the guts. Strange things happen in sport, and most of it revolves around ego, as we saw this year in Canberra. And a CEO I used to work for, who has zero ego and a lot of acumen, you guys can work out who it is, said there's only ever room for one ego at a rugby club. And it's something I learned the hard way and got stuck in the middle of, but it served me pretty well from there. Anyway, getting sacked from the Wallabies was probably the best thing that happened to me, not that I realised it at the time. I freelanced for 12 months, ran my first marathon, earned more money, travelled less, and got to spend more time with Beck in Sydney as a young couple having fun up there. I got to work with the great Richie Benno. I was editing Inside Cricket magazine and he used to do columns for us. And I got to spend the first test in 2006-07 in the Channel 9 commentary box. And it was like being on a live version of the 12th Man. Remember the series? So we'd lost the series in 2005 when Flintoff and Vaughan and Peterson had got us over there. And there was a lot of anticipation. It was big anticipation, similar to after Bodyline. And anyway, Harmison's coming in to bowl. First ball of this test, Langer's facing at the Gabba, and the ball goes to Flintoff at second slip. And Bill Laurie from the back of the box said, "Oh, he should be bowling anyway. These guys are rubbish. We're going to win the series 5-0. I'm like, this is going to be good. Anyway, we won the series 5-0. That was quite good. It was a fun summer, Lottie and Tom. And then Mummy got offered a job at a law firm in London. And the week we were leaving, I got offered the Cricket Australia media job, which would have been a dream job, other than you got to travel 400 days a year. But our dreams were elsewhere. So off to the UK we went to live by the river, work, travel, have some fun, and then return to Australia, have 2.4 kids and live happily ever after. There are so many good stories from the UK. It was a great experience. You know, we were all care, no responsibility work-wise. I got to meet Mr T, which was ridiculous. See the new Wembley Open, play cricket with Tane Randall, fish Justin Marshall's wedding ring out of a safe, meet Stephen Gerrard, see Madonna live, go to the polo, run the London Marathon in a Santa suit, run the Milan Marathon, get ringside seats at the WWE, see an NBA game, an NFL game, and meet the great Phil Power from darts fame, big darts fan. We travelled to Morocco, Cairo, Moscow, and I travelled once a day to a shithole called Watford and Vicarage Road, where Saracens were based, and Elton John used to own a Watford Football Club, and his whole wardrobe was in the main suite of the main grandstand. It was the most bizarre thing you could ever imagine. So we thought living in London was our pre-baby moon, but life doesn't work out like that. We came back to Canberra in 2009 so I could work for Swimming Australia and meet some great people like Rach Roberts, Lee Nugent, Bernard Kath, Beth, Gaz, Lizzie, Raymo and more. It was a fun 4 years actually. No, it wasn't. In the lead up to 2012 we had Thorpe making a comeback which was never going to work, and we had the missile starting to fire which never worked, and then some swimmers decided Stillknox was a good idea and that didn't work. We had 3 CEOs, 3 reviews and 3 presidents in the space of 12 months. But I guess my lesson at the Wallabies had taught me you just got to stick it out. I stood out, stayed away from the politics, stayed on for another 2 years after London and sort of worked through all the rubbish, and I was pleased to see them do a little bit better in Rio. But in truth, my time in swimming was more about Beck and I trying to have a baby, and that was probably why we came back to Australia. And I was at the Commonwealth Games in Delhi and she rang me and said she was pregnant, and it was amazing. You know, we'd been trying for a couple of years, and by the time I got back to Australia, she wasn't pregnant anymore. So this is the tricky bit, Lottie and Tom. This is number 3, okay? This is challenge number 3. It's about the birds and the bees. Not at our house, no. And help from the doctor, please, okay? All right. So sometimes when 2 people love each other and they want to have a baby, it doesn't work out straight away, and that's what happened to us, and we needed help from the doctor. So it took a while, which was hard, and it was really hard for Mummy, and it was hard for me too, Lottie. because mainly it was hard for mummy. And we didn't really talk about it at the time initially. And I guess the sad thing is, and not many people realise this, but 1 in 6 couples over 30 go through a similar journey. So that's why in my, in my adrenaline-fueled state after Beck's death, I set up for my babies. And at the time, it was a pretty simple idea. Let's just help some people talk about this stuff. But it was a big job. It's been a big job, and it's taken a while. But I'm pleased to say we've now got a service up and running with Relationships Australia, where people can pick up the phone and get a heavily subsidised session to get through some counselling. So Mummy and I were very lucky, Tommy and Lottie. We got you two. And you guys got me. Let me tell you though, you guys were #worth it, all right? Because without you, I would be without. So that's the 3 challenges, I guess: the failing at school, getting sacked from the Wallabies, and then the infertility, obviously with Beck. And then there was number 4, when life pretty much changed forever, and Tom and Lots were there for that one. There's been a lot of hard stuff, I'm not going to lie, but I want to talk about 2 things today. The hardest thing, weirdly, has been doing it without her. I mean, we were together 18 years, so she was a constant, and it's the biggest challenge you face in your life, and you don't have the person that you actually want to speak to about it there. The second hardest thing, I guess, is, linked into that is the fact that the kids are so young, and I can't really talk to them about it, obviously, and watching them go through it has been interesting. A mate of mine who was sort of 4 years ahead of me said to me, so a similar thing happened to him, so he's 4 years ahead of where I am. I sort of saw him 6 months after and was having a coffee, and he said, look, you realise it's actually normal for the kids now. Their life is normal, and it made perfect sense. Like, my life was completely unnormal and theirs was. So in a way it helped, because they were happy and they made me a bit more happy. I guess the second hardest thing is I haven't been able to share with her the little quirky fun things that these guys do on a regular basis, and the tantrums, which are Lottie. So I decided early on that I would share as much as I could on social media. So anyone who's on my Facebook, I apologise for the selfie spam. But I guess in a weird way, I kind of thought, if people like it, it sort of, Beck would have loved it. And for me, it was a way of sharing something that I saw that I liked, having no one really there to share it with. I also made a point of writing down every time these guys would talk about their mum and tell a little story. And sometimes it was bloody hard. Like, they'd tell this story and I'd pull over, go to the back of the car and lose it, and then just tap it into my phone. But now we've got some 10,000 words of theirs, of stories from last year, which they can read. And I'll give you a little example. Tommy liked dinos for a bit last year, and he asked me, where are they? And I said, they're extinct. And he said, what does extinct mean, Dad? And I said, it means they've died. He said, how'd they die? I said, they all fell in a volcano. And he said, what about the pterodon? And I said, the pterodon's wings got burnt in the volcano. And he said, right, okay. So they've all died. And then he just had this big pause, and he said to me, no, Dad, the T-Rex is going to get Mummy in heaven. And I said, no, mate, everything in heaven is good, okay? So she's fine, mate, and the T-Rex is fine too, okay? I take a lot of selfies with the kids, and it's to remember moments, little moments. And to be honest, we never took enough family photos, and I blame Beck for that. And she'd take that. She was one of those ones where you'd take a photo and then she'd delete it straight away. But seriously, it's so easy. You got film in your phones, take some photos. Like, it's that easy. It's why I took 18 months off work, because I wanted to be present with the kids, and by that I mean not have to worry about email and phone and getting out the door in time. It was just to be with them, and we had an amazing 18 months. We did some crazy things. We went to 10 zoos, which was full on. I remember a mate of mine at the time said, but what are you going to do with your time? I said, well, I'm going to look after my kids. He's like, right, okay. And I actually thought, if I was a woman, there's no way anyone would have ever asked me that question. These kids were 3 and 2. And I read Annabelle Crabb's Wife Drought not long after Beck passed away. And every man in this room, if you love your wife and she's a professional or working or whatever and raising kids in primary care, you should read the book. The women will read it, it's a waste of time because you'll just nod your head and go, yeah. But seriously, it just gives you a bit of perspective on the challenges that women face in raising kids and having a career. So our little team of 3 is a bit of a perfect mess, that's what I like to say, and we've adjusted and we'll continue to adjust, and it may be a perfect mess for a long time, who knows. It's been hard, I'm not going to lie. It was hard early this year because last year I kind of just sort of thought, let's just get through a year, and then I got to the start of this year and I thought, oh shit, I've got the rest of my life to sort out now. So that was probably the hardest moment, and people helped me around that. And you guys, Tom and Lottie, you've dealt with hard at a very young age. You don't really realise it yet, but you've dealt with hard, and I think it's going to keep you in very good stead for a long time. I've dealt with hard, but I've had enough hard for now, to be honest. A mate of mine who's in this room used to say you've got to swallow a frog once a day, and by that, do something you don't want to do. And I reckon I swallowed frogs, toads, crickets, whatever. Did so much stuff I did not want to do. And I reckon, probably could end up speaking French or something, I don't know. It was just, there were so many things you had to do that you didn't want to do. And you just got to do them, and there's people in this room who understand exactly what I'm talking about. So I guess I can stomach anything now, but I really prefer a steak or a red wine or a scotch by the fire rather than toads or frogs, Roffy. Okay. So Lottie and Tom, I hope you don't mind me sharing our little story. I hope it helps some people. It's really important to talk, and especially for blokes, and what Martin and his guys do with Menslink, really important. This is Mental Health Week. Mental health, I'm really excited. I'm now working in the mental health sector, and we've all seen the rise of Beyond Blue, Are You OK, over the last 10 years. This is not going away, and hopefully people like Frank are going to get us a whole lot more funding to help out mental health in Australia. Tommy, I love you, hippo. Potsy?
I love you,
Farm? You love me, farm?
Yeah.
What do you love me, lots? A fairy. Okay, good. Be good tonight. Do good sleeping because I want to have a few drinks, okay? All right. Love, Daddy. That's the end of the letter. P.S. P.S. I like a good P.S. Nearly, mate. Nearly. P.S. And studies show, Pemby, that 90% of people read PSs, often first. So put them in your blog, mate. Mate, put them in your blog, mate. PPS. Hopefully in a couple of weeks I'll turn 40. Yeah. And hopefully I've experienced a pretty genuine midlife crisis. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Canberra, for being a little village with a big heart filled with a lot of good people. I never found out who paid for our breakfast one day at Farmer's Daughter when I took the kids down there in their pyjamas. Someone obviously thought I was doing it tough. I just needed coffee. But seriously, there's been people who've done a lot of good things, so thank you. Our little team of 3 really appreciates it. Thank you to Sam, a really good mate of mine who lives in New Zealand. Thanks to Kel, who's been a really good friend over the last 18 months and has had her own challenges to deal with. Thanks to Steve and Nick, who have been friends for a very long time and put up with me just turning up unannounced and look after me. Thanks to my family, some who are here tonight, some who couldn't be here. And I guess thanks to Beck for everything, but most importantly for these 2 little vermin who, we're a team of 3 now and we'll get on with it. So thank you. And I'm happy to take questions. Hang on, Tommy, have you got a question, Tom? Ah, okay. Yes, what's your question, darling? Hang on, wait. Okay.
How did you get to Rio?
Oh, good question, Lottie. Good question. How did I get to Rio? I went on a big plane, Lottie.
2 or 3.
What's that? 2 or 3. Good question. 3 planes, and I got stuck in Chile for a day, which was awesome. Yes, sorry, one more from Lottie.
Why did you go to Rio?
To get away from you. No, seriously, it's a good question. The Paralympics is probably the most grounding experience anyone can be involved with. I did it in London. I did the Olympics, which was pretty hard, and then the Paralympics, which was amazing. So many good stories. I'll tell you one quick story about a Canberra girl. Monique Murphy. She went to St Clair's. She went down to Melbourne University. She went out with her friends. 5 days later, she woke up in a coma. Her drink had been spiked. She'd fallen off a five-storey balcony through a plate glass window. She woke up missing her leg, massive scars and lacerations across her chest. 2 years later, she's at the Paralympic Games and won a silver medal. She's 23. So, amazing. And a Canberra girl.